Hello, this is Tom, Tabletop Tap Room reporting, and today we're talking about the lies we tell about the Satanic Panic. Well, this is a topic and a half. It's actually a little bit of a clickbaity title. It's just really inspired by one lie told about Satanic Panic, and I just thought, well, I'll do a video there. But the more I thought about it, the more I've been revising this video. There's three cornerstones, as I see it, to the Satanic Panic, and maybe I've missed something that was famous. Maybe I missed something. I don't see the televangelist, forget his name, who got on his show, 700 Club, I think it was, held up a D&D manual, and said, "This is of the devil." I believe it's still on YouTube. I checked it out years ago. It's out there. On the internet, it's forever. I don't believe that's a cornerstone of the Satanic Panic. I believe that was a symptom. That was a symptom of the Satanic Panic. The three cornerstones that, as I see it, that gave push and impetus. Okay, and then those three got people talking, and then that just talking and rumors just snowballed. And, because it's sensational. Kids are worshiping Satan. It's sensational. And I think these three things helped. Two of these things helped kick it off. The third one, I think, was just an opportunist, and he just said, "I can make a name on this," and he got on board and he pushed and became the expert for it. So before I get too deep, let me just say thanks for watching the video. Thanks to my subscribers. You guys are great. And don't forget that like, subscribe, and bell icon. How we build the channel. So we're talking about the lies we tell about the Satanic Panic. I'm going to come back to those inciting incidents. Let me just start with the story that kicked me off. So on this topic, and this probably will be one of two videos I do. The other, I'm actually thinking about doing a video not for gamers, not for you, my subscribers who subscribe. I'm thinking about doing a video for my religious friends. Examining, is D&D of the devil? Just digging into, I feel like maybe I might be a person who could have something to say about that, and maybe do a video geared towards my religious friends, because I have a lot of religious friends. I've been a religious person since I became an adult, and went to a seminary for a period of time. I have religious friends who play RPGs. I have religious friends who be like, "Oh no, you don't play that thing, do you?" They still have this seed planted in their head that D&D is bad. Why? Because I heard it. Because it was talked about. Rumor mill just spread that around, planted those seeds, and nobody's ever come in and cleaned them out. So maybe a video on that should be done sometime here in the near future. But let's look at today. This post happened this week. This is somebody posted on Facebook a link to Atlas Obscura. And the blog was doing a discussion on the 1980s media panic over Dungeons & Dragons. And an unnamed person here, whose name has been blocked out for their anonymity, responded, "It never ceases to amaze me how, to this day, the D&D panic," they don't even call it Satanic Panic, they call it the D&D panic, gets blown out of proportion. Except for the news article buried next to the shoe advertisements in one cheesy movie, D&D was barely on the news media. I disagree with him here. It did hit the news. It did hit. And it got more traction in various religious circles. a little bit in Catholic circles, a little bit, quite a bit more in more conservative evangelical circles. So, it depends on what you were paying attention to. So if you weren't watching televangelists who were, for a brief moment, jumping on board and, oh my God, our children, we must fight against this for the sake of the children. Yeah, then you would miss that. I missed that. I had to go back and hit YouTube and look that stuff up. And okay, yeah, there's that buffoon. I never liked him anyways. So I disagree with him here. It did hit international media outlets. So it's not that that it barely, it did. And it was a thing. And depending on your social circles, I think, or your parents' social circles, it might have been a bigger thing for some people than for others. For the most part, I think it was overblown. I really don't think there were many book burnings, quite honestly. Okay? And I'm going to get to my brief brush with the Satanic Panic. That, let's say that mine had been the full Monty. Take the books. The books would have never been burned. Why? Grew up on an Air Force base. Okay? And on this particular base housing was on one side of the street. You go across the street, there was a fenced-in area and big tanks full of jet fuel. Open flames were not allowed out in the yard. Just weren't. With good reason. Understandably, you have these massive tanks of jet fuel. One goes up, they all go up, I presume. I don't know, but I would guess. And the explosion would be big enough to reach across that road and decimate some of the housing, for sure. I have no doubt. So, there would never have been a book burning, for me being an Air Force brat, just because. Just, regulations don't allow book burnings on the base, thank God. And, we were a lot closer to the 1940s then, and we had all seen clips of Hitler and the book burning. We'd seen that stuff, at least if not on TV, we'd seen it in history class. So this image of book burning it would not have set well with people. I just don't think that were that many book burnings. Were books confiscated? Were they thrown away? Yeah. Sure, I could buy that. So, anyway. So this guy says completely overblown. I say, for the most part, overblown. So I disagree with him, but one of my favorite posters of all time, I love this guy, Dungeon Hobby Shop Museum. Except it's not Dungeon Hobby Shop Museum. Who could it be? Well, since the judge in the Wizards case ordered that all social media managers for Dungeon Hobby Shop and TSR be fired, and the CEO, Justin Lanassa, take over all duties of managing all social media, we now know it's him. And, that was a measure put in place because there had been some substantial witness tampering and witness harassment going on through social media. And so this became order in the court. It's the documents are on Pacer if you want to read them. I got them buried in a file on my computer. They're boring, but it's a fact. So we know this is Justin Lanassa posting as Dungeon Hobby Shop Museum. And he says, totally agree. Can we quote you on that, Justin? You totally agree. What do you totally agree to? Well, what this guy said, that the Satanic Panic was completely overblown. If I could paraphrase that guy's, it wasn't a thing. It was barely in the news media. It was nothing. It's overblown. Totally overblown. And Justin says, totally agree. How much do you agree, Justin? Totally. Which is interesting because we have this little document. This is from 2 years prior when he published Pesky Goblins. I don't even have to show you the title page. He signed it with his name. And right here where I've highlighted, he says, and yes. Because he's talking in this paragraph about his joy of playing Dungeons and Dragons, going to the hobby store, playing with his friends. And it sounded like it. Then he goes, and yes, I lived through the so-called days of Satanic Panic. Which would make you think, if you stopped at that sentence, it'd make you think that he's on the totally overblown. It sounds like, yeah, so cold. So cold. It was a few days, here and gone. But then he says, yes, I had many copies of my Dungeons and Dragons books burnt. I even remember being banned from the Order Line, which was the hobby store there in York, Pennsylvania, by my parents, and having to sit on their back porch, gaming through the screen door that was acceptable by the store owners, Mr. Potter and Mr. Strickler. I just had my brain flash to Strickland from Back to the Future telling Justin, "You're a slacker." So this story doesn't ring true for a couple of reasons to me. Number one, stores have a front door. That's where customers enter. The back door and the back parts of the store are where they store stuff. They have an office. This is pretty standard all across America with storefronts. And it just doesn't have the ring of truth. Why would the owners care that he's banned? They wouldn't. They wouldn't. You just walk in, they're not going to say anything. They're happy to have you come in and spend money. They're hoping you're going to come in and spend money. They're all about commerce. They don't care. They have no reason. They have no dog in this fight. You're not their kid, and they're selling. You know, if your parents view D&D as crack cocaine, they're selling the crack cocaine. They're the merchants. They're the pushers. They want him to come in and buy. And where else is he buying them other than in the store? Because remember, he said many were burned. He doesn't tell us how many. You'd think he would remember. I would remember. How many times did my D&D books get burned? I would remember. Because then I had to go mow more lawns and take the lawnmower money and sneak off downtown to the bookstore to buy more books. That's what I would remember. I would be like, 4 times my D&D books were burned. I would wear it like a badge of honor. Here's the badge. 4 times my books were burned. Okay? I am a martyr in the Satanic Panic Wars. Okay? That's what Justin's saying here, and I don't buy this at all. Mostly because we have a statement totally overblown. I mean, it's the classic, you tell a lie, but then you can't remember what you told for a lie, and so you can't keep your story straight. It's that. And, too bad Justin wasn't an elephant, see? Because an elephant, they got long memories. An elephant can probably keep its lies straight. So I actually did a little more digging on this. We got 2 stories from Justin. We don't know which one's right, but I thought I might be able to ask somebody about it because I remember that, Dawn was sold Justin product and then became a publisher for him and was kind of in the inner circle till he began seeing a lot of inconsistencies. I just thought he was in. Maybe Justin talked about playing D&D. So I thought I'd ask him. So I sent him this email. Don, this is Tom from Tabletop Reporter. And I want to ask you if you can answer a question about Justin Lanassa. Did Justin ever mention to you that he actually even ever a player of Dungeons & Dragons as a kid? What an awkwardly... I was clearly writing too fast. If you can at least answer that one question, I will need permission to use your answer in any possible videos I make. Of course, as long as I quote you properly, Tom. So, Don sent me this email, and I'm going to read it because Don did stipulate you must, if you use this, please read the whole email. Glad to hear from you. I think I am safe to answer this question as long as you do not misquote me. Or if you use this email, I'm going to ask you to use it in full so there is no ambiguity to my words. I say this as I'm trying to be careful on what I say about Justin due to ongoing litigation, wizards, and other avenues I am pursuing at the moment. Other avenues he is pursuing at the moment. That's interesting. Think on that. But so as far as did Justin ever mention playing D&D as a kid? Yes, many times. Justin many times talked of his love for the game and playing with his friends at his house. His enjoyment of the game as a kid, I can remember a few tales he told me and Michael of his PCs he ran. Even a nice story of once his mother watching him and his friends play at the kitchen table and taking an interest in the game. Heck, although we have our differences, this is Dawn referring to him and Justin, he seemed lucky that his mom liked the game, as my mom tolerated it but never took any interest in it. There are other stories he mentioned that I think validate his claims as a kid playing it. I remember another story he told of him and his friends playing D&D all night, and his mom waking up surprised that they were still adventuring, so she made them breakfast, even. So yes, his claims, if that is what you are trying to validate, of playing D&D as a kid, at least per his stories to myself and others to me and Hovermail, are accurate, as I mentioned above. Hope all is well. Chat later, Dawn. Thank you, Dawn, for that. So, it sounds like, from the stories he told Dawn, that his mother was not some religious nut. But it really does not sound like there was religious cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs going on, and we must save our son from Satan. It doesn't sound like what that was going on. It sounded like his mother was very supportive and took interest in his game. In fact, somewhere in my files, I have a photograph of Justin, a young Justin, holding up. It looks like it was Christmas or a birthday, and he's holding up the box set, the companion box set from the Beckme. So it really seems like his parents were very supportive and loving towards him. And this story of the Satanic Panic, burning his books many times, he doesn't tell us how many times. You would think I would wear it like a badge. 4 times. 4 times my mother burned my books, and I had to. Okay? So, some people tell stories. But I think we actually have the real story about Justin concerning the Satanic Panic, that it never happened for him. Because it really sounds, from what Dawn can confirm, that he had loving, supportive parents. I would have loved for my parents to take an interest in Dungeons and Dragons. I was very frustrated with my mother. We were in England. We're visiting the Tower of London. You know what's in the Tower of London? There's a museum full of arms and armor, medieval arms and armor, and some really cool samurai armor. They got some they have one room that's just samurai armor. Really cool. My mother rushed me through the Tower of London because she was bored with the arms and armor. Right? I'm totally geeking out. Like, I can't read plaques fast enough. I can't read the plaque fast. I want to read the plaque. I want to look at the stuff. I want to look at it. You walk around the case and look, because the Japanese armor was in these glass cases. You could walk around them. Those things they're a work of art from all sides. You got to walk around it to really appreciate. Wow. My mother rushed me through the Tower of London. Pissed me off. Okay, we go to Warwick Castle, another museum. She didn't rush me through that one so bad, but again, I'm like, Mom, you know what? I've put up with a lot of sightseeing of things I don't care about here in England. Okay, I'm turning 18. I care about the beer. All right, that I care about. I care about Dungeons and Dragons. I care about castles. The other stuff you're interested in, I have no interest in. And she's rushing. The one time I get to, look at all this cool stuff, she rushes me through it. I had a grudge. I had a grudge against my mother for that. So, I'm kind of envious, like Dawn, to have had a supportive mother like Justin did. So, not buying the story. The screen door playing at the back door. Don't buy that at all. It just sounds a little too contrived. The mother's not there to enforce the ban. He's going inside the store. Come on. So, yeah, the story's contrived. The stories we tell about the Satanic Panic. Again, the Satanic Panic. There are three cornerstone stories to it. It's the Dallas Egbert suicide, the Pulling, Patricia Pulling, and bothered about drunk driving. The inciting incident there is the suicide of her son. And then you had this, I forgot the name of this guy. I had all the screenshots at one point. I was looking at writing a book. But he was a therapist, and he was the one who I think he helped get Patricia Pulling on some of because Patricia Pulling was Jewish. She was Jewish, and yet she gets on all these Christian shows. Well, I believe he's the one that helped get her onto some of these shows, and he was the talking head expert as a psychotherapist or whatever his thing was. Making a name for myself, talking about Satanism and saving our children from the demonic music and the satanic game, And this guy, years later, we find out, is busted for writing scripts for narcotics in exchange for sex from patients in his clinic. I mean, where's the ethics there? This guy was an unethical douchebag. Okay? He was an unethical douchebag. And with ethics that far in the toilet, the man's not above lying. The man's not above making stuff up. And when you read some of the things these people said, him and Patricia Pulling, it's obvious to a fan of Dungeons and Dragons, they're fabricating what they're making up. Oh yeah, I've done all this research, and Patricia Pulling claimed to have played D&D with some teenagers for 6 months, and so she had these wild, fantastic stories about what went on, and it obviously fabricated. It bears no resemblance to anything anybody who is a fan of D&D would recognize as what goes on in D&D. So it's fabricated. It's a lie. It's based on a lie. And it's easier when you dig into the Patricia Pulling story to believe that it was easier for her to blame D&D than to accept any role or responsibility she had in the suicide death of her son. And looking at it, I think it's more probable that his suicide was about his relationship with his mother, based off certain details and what transpired. So, and again, we've never seen the suicide note. There are people who say, yeah, there was a suicide note. And then there's no suicide. What suicide note? There's no suicide note. I believe, it's just my thought, my supposition, I believe that she found the note and she hung on to it. She never shared it. I think it was too damning what was in it. That's what I think. I can't prove it. It's a guess. But that whole cornerstone of Patricia Pulling bad, it's built on a lie. It's built on a fabrication. I'm going to mess up his name, Dallas Egbert suicide. The kid supposedly went. The story was he went into the steam tunnels at his university, took a whole bottle of pills and drank a fifth of vodka and passed out, and then woke up 2 days later, went over to a friend's house and was eventually found at a friend's house because everybody was looking for him. Parents were not happy with the police. Were like, well, he might have run away. They they don't get busy. The police don't get jiggy with it with a missing teen like that till 3 days. There's not a missing person until it's been 3 days. So the parents had some money and they weren't having this, and they hired this private dick to look for him. And this guy was a media whore, was all about himself. And he eventually found the kid. And the story goes, and again, I don't even know for sure that he took all those pills and drank the vodka in the steam tunnels. The steam tunnels supposedly where they played D&D and carried on satanic rituals. I think he was just dealing with stuff, and he was hiding out at his friend's house for 3 days, basically. That's what I think. Either story could be true, that he took them and then woke up, went to the friend's house. It could be either. Either's plausible. But the story goes that he begged this private dick to not tell his parents about what was really going on, which was that he had realized he was gay, and he could not tell his parents. And you got to remember, this is the 80s, and you just couldn't come out. Now, in the country at that time, you had scenes in New York and San Francisco and Los Angeles that were kind of famous for people being flamboyant and out. And that was great for those communities, for those people. But that was not the rest of America. And, again, this is the 80s, and, this kid was having mental health issues, not because he was gay, but because he couldn't tell his parents something. And he had all this pressure because of it. And I think he wanted to come out. I think he wanted to come out and be out and be honest about who he was. That's what I think. But he had all this pressure on himself, and so it was eating him up. And, probably had guilt from his parents placed on him as well. So he was having issues. And I really don't like this private dick because he really was full of himself. He was a media whore. But it seems to me that he had a moment of compassion on the kid and said, all right, I won't tell your parents. And he blamed it on Dungeons and Dragons. So if that's what happened, and it gave this kid a measure of respite from the pressure that was on him, then I'm okay with that lie, placing the blame on D&D, let D&D take one for the team, because this kid really was not getting the help he needed. He really needed some therapy. He really needed some counseling to help him deal with this issue with his parents, help him realize it's not the end of the world, okay? And maybe your parents will come around, possible. But, he did not need to kill himself. But if this private dick blaming D&D, which the only motive I see him doing that for is either thinking, well, I can make a bigger deal about this, it's more salacious, more fantastic if it's, kid attempts suicide because of Dungeons and Dragons versus, kid struggling with his gender identity, with his homosexuality, unable to tell his parents, attempts suicide. It's a bigger news story, I think, with the D&D. So maybe he did it as a media whore, which we know he was, or maybe he had some little ounce of compassion in his heart to tell the parents that. Because certainly, now that the kid is found, there's going to be all these questions on him. Where were you? Don't you know where you're looking for? The police are looking for you. And if you give them a plausible story, it can lessen some of the questions. You have two lies. Dallas Egbert, suicide case, Fisher pulling, total fabrications about D&D. Those are two of the inciting incidents for the Satanic Panic. And then you have this totally unethical douchewaffle of a counselor who got on all the TV shows and was on all the Christian shows and all the other talking head shows as the expert on Satanism, Dungeons and Dragons, and and come to find out, he was writing scripts for narcotics, prescribing narcotics in exchange for sex from patients. I mean, so unethical. Such a douchebag. Man with no ethics. So why would we even believe anything out of this guy's mouth? The guy was, And when you read his stuff, there's an air of fabrication to it. It's like none of this has any relationship to what I know about RPGs and what I know about Dungeons and Dragons. So the whole Satanic Panic was built on a foundation of lies. And, I think its strength after that, people, they don't know anything about it. They hear some, and those rumors persist. Those rumors persist. They plant a little seed, and even my college roommate, I was told I was going to the Dungeons and Dragons movie. It's my college roommate from seminary. He gave me a hard time. You're not going to that. Yeah, I'm going to watch that. Then I wish I hadn't. The Jeremy Irons one. I was like, all right, how do I get my $5 back? Damn, that was bad. So, these little things get planted, and they don't get challenged, they don't get cleaned out, and they just linger. And even, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, encountered someone here, and I was like, I write for an RPG fan magazine. What, like Dungeons? Yeah, I like Dungeons and Dragons, but it's sci-fi. Oh, I heard that stuff was bad. I'm like, it's science fiction. We're not even talking fantasy here. I just didn't even want to argue. But the seed had been planted way back, and it just lingered in that person's mind, and they didn't know any better, and so they open up the file drawer where Dungeons and Dragons is. Oh, here's the file drawer that what I know about Dungeons and Dragons is in, and they open it up, and their seed is in there. Oh, it's Dungeons and Dragons bad. It's never been challenged, so they just go off of that information. They just regurgitate bad information because it was bad information in. There was something that went around. I don't know that it was as bad as it's made out to be. I certainly don't believe that some kid in York, Pennsylvania had his D&D books burnt many times. It just doesn't have the ring of truth at all. So, we tell stories. Now, let me tell my story, my 20-minute story. And now, here's the thing. I did a little math, just out of curiosity. 20 minutes. My sum total interaction with the Satanic Panic. I'd never heard the term Satanic Panic until late 90s or early 2000s. I'm really not sure when. I began to study it in earnest some point in the 3.5 D&D era. So I calculated all of the minutes in the decade of the 80s. And that was 506,880 minutes of that decade. 20 minutes of that was my brush with the Satanic Panic, and that works out to 0.004% of the time I had to deal with Satanic Panic. I've actually dealt with Satanic Panic more since 2000, just because I've studied it. just because I'm interested in these things. So my 0.004% story is this. Not directly connected to D&D. It was about music, but I believe the whole impetus of it was a whole satanic panic going around church groups. My mother came home from the Catholic Women of the Chapel, and so she was home before me. I got off the bus, and she had been in my room and had gone through my albums and had my stack of albums in the kitchen. And somebody had said something to her, and oh, you gotta check out what you've gotta protect your son from that satanic music. You gotta find out what he's listening to. So she came home determined to be a good mother, because the person said it, and I don't want to look like a bad mother. I don't want my son to go to hell. So she grabs my albums, and she's determined to confiscate one of my albums. I had 15 at the time. I was actually switching over to cassette tapes. Because you put cassette tape in the boom box and you could rewind it. My history of music was I had a 8-track tape. I bought an 8-track tape for $0.25 at a yard sale. I ended up with a piece of furniture in my bedroom that was this big cabinet that had a turntable in it, a player. It played an 8-track, and it had a radio and speakers. And you could not plug headphones into it. It had no headphone jack. It was just old. But I ended up with it, and so I bought this Led Zeppelin 8-track at a yard sale for $0.25, and quickly discovered 8-tracks suck. You can't rewind them. You got to fast forward them. You to go back to the song you just listened to. So then Columbia Records and Tapes came out. You paid a penny, and you got 10 albums, but you had to buy like 5 more at regular club prices. And so I had a collection of like 15. Some AC/DC, some Loverboy, some Night Ranger, Pat Benatar, Asia. I had Asia, some Duran Duran. No, I had Duran Duran on cassette tape. But I was transitioning because, albums not as convenient as cassette tapes. You take the cassette tape in the boom box and go out, do stuff in the neighborhood. That's what we did. So I was kind of going into cassette tapes at that point. And Mom was determined to confiscate one of my albums. And why not all of them? And she did not, her scientific examination of my album collection really was limited to the covers, and which is funny because AC/DC albums, which she bypassed, and went to the Asia album. And if you know anything about that Asia album, the dragon dancing across the water, which is the irony of it is like totally not lost on me. Inside, I'm kind of laughing, but it's not funny because she's gonna confiscate my stuff. And if she confiscates one, maybe she'll confiscate more in the future. So I'm gonna resist this all the way, but I got to do it respectfully, because if I am disrespectful and mouth off too much to my mother, it's wait for your father to come home time. And when your father comes home, there's a little bit of a reckoning to be had for disrespecting his wife. Did not go well with him. So I am being respectful, but I'm trying to reason with her. And I'm like, let's listen. She don't want to listen to the albums. And which is fine, because I'm going to save AC/DC for last if we listen to all the albums, right? She don't want to listen to the albums. I'm like, I'm pulling the album out of the jacket, And I'm like, here's the lyrics right on the sleeve. Let's read the lyrics. Just read the lyrics. You'll see there's nothing to this. And so after 20 minutes, I am doing a charisma check here. Okay, see, now you have DC checks. You got to beat a target number. You got to roll higher than the target number. Back in the day, we would do ability checks. You had to roll under your ability score. And so I'm warming up that 20-sided die. Okay, and I'm reasoning with I'm doing a charisma check. And my problem is this. We all use charisma as our dump stat. Oh, we got a 6, putting that on charisma. I don't care, right? We're putting high numbers on strength, dexterity, intelligence, constitution. But for all I'm worth, doing this charisma check with Mom, and I'm like, come on, roll low, gotta roll under the number. Woo! And I rolled a 1, which basically was a critical success. And finally, my mother gave up in frustration. And you could tell she was frustrated, disgusted that I somehow bettered her in this, and I'm not in the position of power here. I'm, hoping I can dodge a bullet and protect my devil music albums, AC/DC, from being found out. So I don't want her to even confiscate Asia, because that sets a precedent that she might be able to confiscate others. Maybe somebody might put another hair across her ass at Catholic Women of the Chapel. And so I'm holding the line, and I made the charisma check, which was like, because charisma dump stat, and and squeak by, and I never heard another word again. Now, I was also smart. I never left my D&D rulebooks open to certain pages with certain art, okay, where my mother could see it. If we're at the dining room table, keep the book closed. If you need to have the book there, keep it closed. Don't leave it laying open for her to see Asmodeus or any of the demons or the succubus. We don't need any of that. We'll leave deities, demigods, heroes, deities, demigods up in the room. She don't need to see that. She might start questioning, what are you doing with all these pagan gods? We're not going to stir the pot. We're not going to antagonize. And so I was very careful. And that was my sum total, 20 minutes, 0.004% of my life in the 80s, involving the Satanic Panic, which I firmly believe was really tied to the larger whole, we got to protect our kids from Satanism. So that was my story, and I never knew that it was called the Satanic Panic till late 90s, early 2000s. And then I just got curious and researched it, and became fascinated by these stories. So, Justin's story, don't buy. I think he's more truthful when he said, yeah, I totally agree, it's overblown. I don't believe that it was totally overblown. I believe people did experience some things. And, maybe if enough of you have had some really hardcore experiences, I might be swayed to move the needle more towards the middle. But I believe the whole Satanic Panic, built on a foundation of lies, fabrications, just not true. And then, as rumors go, people talk. Rumors grow, seeds get planted, and things take on a life of their own, as rumors do. And that's, to me, the whole crux of the Satanic Panic. And so that's why I feel it's overblown. But for the most part, not totally. Because I don't want to minimize somebody else's experience, because I know people did go through some stuff. So if that's you, and you got a story, I would love to hear it, because I'm fascinated with this, and maybe I will go back to that idea of trying to put together a book. I don't know that there's enough material to really do it justice, but, you know, throw something in the show notes, in the comments below. So this is Tom for Tabletop Taproom Reporting. Thanks for watching the video. Thanks to my subscribers. You guys are great. Don't forget that like, subscribe, and bell icon. Help me build the channel. As usual, I say keep on gaming. Just don't do it with none of that satanic stuff. Have a good night.